was there a pivotal moment where you were like, New Age isn't for me anymore? And that like shift towards Jesus, was there an experience that took place?
Yeah, so I try to keep it short, but the story comes in layers. It comes in phases, right? Like I was interested in Christianity, or I was brought up in a Catholic home, Catholic culture, in just Latin cultures are quite Catholic. Um, and I always had that I was drawn towards church. I was drawn towards the tradition. And then my family took me to churches like on important days, or like when the whole family was going to go, my other uncles and aunts and cousins and all that. And then that's when I found the New Age when I was 13, and then I found that there was the depth that I was looking for, which I wasn't getting from church because I wasn't going. And so that was one part, right, that I was kind of derailed a bit. Then another one was when I was pregnant with my son. That was over 6 years ago, and I went to like a little music group for children that was in a church, and I really connected with the ladies, and I started going to church then, and then something happened in the church that then I just was repelled by it again, and it was actually because they were saying that there were so many people that were considering themselves witches and all the things that I considered myself. And I was really triggered, and I was crying in church, just feeling like, oh, they're not accepting me, they're calling me out, and all those things. So I stopped going. So that was like the second one, you could say. Then the third one happened last year. Yeah, at the around this exact same time, actually, probably to the day last year, and I set out myself to do like a challenge of yoni steaming every single day, and I had this grief come up every single day, and it would just kind of come to the chest, and I just couldn't express it. And I'm like, oh, what is it? And I kind of went like, oh, maybe it's related to my ex-boyfriend from when I was 20. And then I had on day 28 of doing the yoni steaming, I had this, which is similar to you. I had this voice come in saying it's related to your father. So I knew there was something around the masculine. I just couldn't really put my finger on it. And so when I heard this voice saying it's related to your father, I'm like, ah, yeah, well, I think I've worked on my father wound and all those things. And then the voice said, not that father. And I bawled. I started crying and crying. And finally, that grief that I just felt here every single day when I was doing the yoni steaming finally came out. And straight away, I put one of the songs from the church that I was going, and that just really liberated this held. It was like I was guarding myself against God. I was guarding myself against the Father, just telling him, stay away. I only follow the goddess. I only, it's all about me and all these things. And that I really felt the walls crumble around me in that moment. And I was still doing my work. I was still doing shamanism. And whenever I would invoke the elements before doing a shamanic healing, before doing a workshop, which I was doing a lot of with women. And after that, I started doing the invocation, right, of the elements and the directions. I started calling in the grace of God. And I'm like, okay, let's see. And it just felt like I had to. And I was a bit scared. I'm like, how are these women going to react? Like, I'm calling in the grace of God. It's like, oh, it's weird. And I was also doing, during that time that I was doing every day yoni steaming practices, I was doing kundalini practices. And one of them is called the grace of God meditation. And you just say to yourself, I am the grace of God. I am the grace of God. I am the grace of God a few times. And even connecting to that was hard for me because I wasn't open to the idea of a male god. I just didn't want it. I didn't want it to be true. I didn't want a man leading me or guiding me or creating everything when Mother Earth is the fertile one and we're the ones that give birth. You know, so that was another really big one. And from then on, I started opening. It was like if a flower had just had the first bud and it was just about to start blooming. And it was finally right, like the last experience that got me to get away from the new age was at the beginning of the year. Literally, well, I was preparing for a few months, probably like starting in October. I was feeling there was a death coming, like an archetypical death and a shamanic death, a dismemberment that needed to happen to me. And I was feeling really depressed, really empty in a way that I couldn't describe. I was seeing tarot readers, I was seeing energetic healers, I was doing everything, family constellations, I was pattern making, everything. I was doing everything and nothing was helping. And I'm like, probably I just need to go through this shamanic dismemberment and death to get to that. I bought black candles and I set myself up to go in a drum journey within myself to the psyche in an altered state of consciousness through the drum. No plant medicine, and just get rid of whatever needs to get rid of. And during that time, I was very deep into the goddesses, so I went to the dark goddess, and I timed it. I timed it at the start of the year because I had I developed this severe tonsillitis that I went to the doctors after that, and I went to the hospital, and everyone was like, "So how long have you had this?" I'm like, "1 day," and they just couldn't believe that I just developed it like that. It was incredibly quick, and so I sat down one night when I had severe tonsillitis and I was spitting out blood. It was it was like hell. Not saying that I want to know or think what hell would be like. I'm sure it's way, 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 way worse than that. um, but I did the drum journey to the dark goddess to receive the dismemberment. Anyway, all that happened, and I thought that when I would come back from the drum journey, I would be healed, and I would be like, okay, so my throat still hurts. I could barely breathe because it was really, really bad. And I went to bed and I'm like, I'm going to do another drum journey. Like, I'm going to connect with my spirit guys. I had had mapped out in shamanism, there's a higher realm, middle realm, and a lower realm. I'd mapped them out. I was very, very deep. I don't do things by halves. When I go into something, I do every my life turns to point at that and to live completely authentically to whatever I'm doing. And in that time, I knew all my spirit guys. I knew their names. I knew what they did. I intimately knew them as friends. So I went to some of them in the higher realms, and there were 3 women that I used to work with around womb healing, and they gave me all this channeled information once upon a time. And when I was going to ask them, like, "Hey, can you heal me? Is this spiritual? Like, what's going on with me?" One of them turned around and their face turned into a demon. And then it turned into like this really demonic realm. And Mother Mary came down in my drum journey. She took my hand and she took me out of there. And she said, "You don't need this. You don't need to do this anymore. You just don't. This doesn't need to happen anymore." And I was like, that was creepy. Like, what was that? She's like, "You've been talking to demons this whole time." And I'm like, what? Then Jesus appeared in the drum journey, and we're just having this communication about how I was dabbling deeply into the demonic realms through shamanism and through everything that I thought was communicating towards me. If it's not godly, it's demonic. And I pushed God so, so far that I just wanted Him to come into my practice the way I was doing it rather than go into His world. Um, so from then on, I was still in the middle of doing a container for women around archetypes, around Jung, around goddesses, and it was incredible. So before that, I was reading that I bought the Bible straight away, started listening to sermons online, to prayers, and I was like, okay, I don't know about Jesus. I don't know who he is. I have no idea about anything about him because growing up Catholic, there's a big emphasis on Mother Mary. And then I felt like a really beautiful connection to Mother Mary, probably like a new agey connection to Mother Mary. And I'm like, okay, the Bible's about Jesus, so I just need to know Jesus. And I thought, well, the only place that I can get him, get an inkling to knowing who he is through the Bible. So I bought the Bible straight away. And then I was still doing this container for women around the archetypes, the goddesses, and it was so difficult to get through it. I just wanted to be in my Bible. And then I would go towards my old notes around the goddesses and the patterns and all those things. And I was having so much resistance. I just did not want to do it. And I had to tell in my container, like, and I've been really open about it as well around my shift, as I am with all the things that I go through in that world. And I had to tell the women, like, this has been a massive shift. Like, I can't deny it. I'm gonna have to change some things of the container, which I did. And the first thing I did after that was kind of going through the archetype of the mother as Demeter, the Greek goddess, and as the shadow mother, and then the light mother as Mother Mary. And little by little, the other ones were okay. I think there were like three other archetypes that I was doing after that. But yeah, I started noticing the resistance to doing it and the pull towards the Bible. And then after I finished that, I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. And I was moving at that time as well. And it was a great opportunity to actually see all the things that I had from the New Age and make like a huge pile to burn, to get rid of. I had idols all over that I was idolizing. And it was a big shift coming away from my animistic views, like talking to the fire, like, hello, grandfather fire, thank you so much for your heat. It's like you was worshiping the creation rather than the creator. And I was worshiping all creation. Not one thing was about the creator, it was all about the creation. I'm like, good morning, grass, good morning. It was pretty bizarre to kind of look back at that. And that's the thing that took me a while to kind of get out of the habit of doing that and just bringing more honor and praise and yeah, to God rather than to the creation.
I had a similar but not similar experience, but mine was over Christmas time, the New Year, where I was brought to my knees, where I literally thought I was in an inner war, like hell. Like it was like I am in hell, very demonic. And I was in Texas because my sister lives in Texas, which is so biblical, right? There's churches on every corner. And she was like, let's go to church. And it was, I
Mm.
think, Christmas Eve. And it was so powerful, how that felt like this is your savior. This is your savior, not your energy clearings or tarot cards or whatever it was, because you spoke to leaky energy previously in the conversation. And it's like, that's what I was opening myself up to by doing all of these other practices as opposed to just going to the creator. And it was like this big shift happened. I came back to Canada. I was like, I'm going to church, and it's just opened massive well of surrender, I think is the best word that comes forward. But it feels like these shifts are really happening for people during this time, like this call back to the creator as God, as the Father.